Hello everyone, Britton here, also known as Samoki Dude, and today I'm going to be covering a bit of a different book, not really usual ones that I cover, but it's a book I've been recommended a lot by friends of mine due to my profession, which is a journalist. And the book I'm going to be covering today is Homicide, A Year on the Killing Streets from David Simon of The Wire fame. Funnily enough, when I was going through this book and I was getting myself kind of in the mood to read it, I was watching videos to kind of get an idea on what this book would be about. I saw a review from someone who was dressed in furry garb. That was interesting. Yeah, that was an interesting experience. But I did manage to get through Homicide. This took me about 2 months to read because it is a very dense book and it's a bit intense at times. But yeah, Homicide. So, as a lot of other people, you might have heard David Simon because he co-created The Wire with Ed Burns, who's also mentioned in this book. And I was also recommended this book by friends of mine who are journalists because, like I said, I'm a journalist by trade. So, I was told this is one of the, best books of journalism, ever. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to check this out. And I decided to make this one of my first reads of the year. And let me tell you, this book was a really fascinating beast of a book. It's an epic, if I might dare say. It took a lot out of me. And this is not a book that is for the faint of heart, because this is a dark, uncompromising, gritty book. And it's not really for the faint of heart. I would say this book feels like a spiritual predecessor to his more famous TV show, The Wire, after a while, to the point where you can kind of pick some characters out if you've seen the show already and figure out where they came from. You could get the idea. There's one character who definitely reminded me of Jimmy from the show. I think his name's Harry Edgerton. Very much is like Jimmy. Very, likes to play things by his own rules. He likes to work alone, he does his own thing, and, just stuff like that. But also, it shares a lot of themes with The Wire, such as the ineffectiveness of the institutions that we're in, except it's not so epic in scale in Homicide as it is in The Wire. It's more, Homicide is more about the police, just in general, because David Simon started out as a police reporter. It also explores how the system in our country is broken at this point and really prevents people from doing their jobs properly and doing their and doing work that's good, that doing good work and try to get people to make the world better. It's our systems that are holding us back from making the world better is basically what he's saying, and he also says that a lot in The Wire. But it's a very good book, very well written. It is dense because David Simon just throws you into the world and gives you so much detail. I'm not going to get into the meat until later on, but David Simon does prove himself to be a natural storyteller. I do love how he immerses you in the atmosphere of this world, and it's almost soul-crushing after a while. You just go to work, get back, do the same thing again all over. And, you can tell why the stereotypes about detectives are a thing, because this is a very bleak and tough life to get through. And it's often, there's no super sleuths in this. There are no mastermind criminals. A lot of the time, it's just dumb people killing each other for dumb reasons, like drugs, or someone was about to leave, or some guy's wife was cheating on him, dumb, shit like that. In this book, it's very much about just you're really thrown in with these people, and David Simon does a fantastic job putting you alongside these characters and the journeys that they really go on. It very much is. The realism in this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it feels like you're right there with the officers, and you feel like you're right there doing You're right there. You're right there with them. I suppose the most haunting part of reading Homicide is just how normal a lot of it becomes. A lot of these cops are not people who are very idealistic about their job, or they care about catching the bad, or well, they do care about catching the bad guy, but they're often like held back. Like, they barely solve a crime in this book. Just little. I don't know if that's really a spoiler, but that's really kind of the thing. Like, they barely solve anything. A lot of the time, they catch people as much by luck as it is through that they're genuinely skilled as investigators. A lot of the time, they're just catching people because they managed to luck into it, as much as they're talented at, detecting. Like, there's really dark stuff in this. Like, one that strikes out in particular is there's a murder of this little girl, which is actually really happened, which is even more fucked up. It's really, really sad. It's and one of the big arcs in this book, if you want to call it that, an arc, is one of the detectives trying to figure out who killed this girl, and it basically drives him insane, and it almost drives you insane along with him, because constantly in this book, David Simon can illustrate how these people feel. Like, you grow frustrated as much as these guys grow frustrated, because they can't do their job properly. They're always held back by faulty work. They're always held back by dumb people in their jobs. They're always finding themselves held back, and it really frustrates them. And they're also just frustrated that people just always are seeming to kill each other for really stupid reasons that really don't matter at the end of the day. Okay. This is also played for black comedy at times. There's a lot of gallows humor in this. Particularly, there's one part that was one of my favorites. This one lady was killing off her husbands, and they end up catching her, and she's just blatantly lying to them, and the guy's like, yeah, she paid me to do it, and she's all like, no, I didn't, It makes more sense in context, but, there's also a darkly funny book. There's also some humor in this that might not have aged well to our modern day sensibilities. This was written in, like, the 90s. I think this was in the 90s. I don't know. But there's some stuff that might not age as well, but the story in this is, or I say story for lack of a better word, it's more of the inner workings of the Baltimore Police Department, and it is really genuinely excellent. I really enjoy how he did it. To be honest with you guys, this book really felt like a war of attrition at times, and it's not because it's bad or it was, like, boring, but this book, like, I had to put this book down a couple times and, like, really think about what I was reading, because this book is dense, like I said before. It is filled with detail, and it's almost overwhelming at times. You're almost just overwhelmed with all the people that are in this, all of the different personalities, all the different cases that they get. There's, like, two Donalds. There's, like, Wittermeyer and this guy named Kincaid. They're both named Donald. It'll throw you off. There's these two black guys. One's called Harry Edgerton. Another one's called, like, Rick. It's crazy. Just so many different people. It's almost an epic at some points. It's very much like The Wire in that way. Just there's a lot of characters to keep track of, and it's just really intense sometimes. But that's not to say this book is bad. This book is filled with a lot of detail, and David Simon trusts the audience to pick up on some of the things that the officers are saying, and you get a grasp of some of the police lingo that's used in this book. I like that Simon doesn't spell it out for the audience. It's more of he gives you the context clues, he gives you the idea of what they're talking about, and lets you come to the conclusion on what these terms mean. And, I really respect that. I think that's a really good tool. Because sometimes I find there's some authors out there who like to spell things out. This felt more like a novel than it did at times. It felt more like a novel at times than it did just a journalistic book. It is told very much like a novel in some ways. They're not, like, he doesn't overly explain himself. And like a friend of mine pointed out, it's almost like you're right there with the cops. You're not just you're not just, it's not an outsider's view, like, oh, this is what happened. He really he's there alongside with the officers, and you're there alongside the officers. And it makes this book very readable, but at times there's a lot of dark stuff in this, and it really can mess with you. And it certainly got to me at times. There's certainly some really great bits in here. The officers kind of dealing with suspects and witnesses and a population who really doesn't like the police all that much. It's more of a they don't really like each other. It's kind of a just not a the police. It talks about some of the tensions between the people and the police, and that the people don't really want to help the police, and especially like in this, there's a lot of slums in this. It talks about how it's really tough to be a police officer, and it's even more. It sounds soul destroying when you really read this. This is definitely not a romantic view of police work. It's very much this is just kind of a day-to-day thing. And the book kind of ends on that note. Life just kind of goes on. Because, that's kind of, what happened. And I'll admit, when I watched The Wire for the first time, it's kind of like that as well. It didn't feel like there was a finality to the story. It just kind of felt like, whatever. Just stuff keeps going on. Same thing with this. Though it's more... It makes more sense. No. It, very much similar in Homicide. Though I wasn't annoyed by the ending as much as with The Wire. Because, I understand it better now than I did when I first watched it. When I was, 15, 16 years old. It's... yeah, I was a weird teenager. Anyway. But yeah, Homicide is David Simon's probably his biggest work aside from The Wire. I highly recommend this book if you haven't read it already. It's a very dark book, so I do there is mentions of rape in this and murder and really bleak stuff. So this isn't for everybody, but I do recommend it. This is a very good book. And I think it's a really very good book. Anyway. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. You can go check me out on Twitter. You can go check me out on Goodreads and Letterboxd, which is probably find more coherent reviews than the one you just heard right now. And you can probably find me on Discord. You can come talk to me and maybe recommend me some video ideas. I don't know. But yeah, no. This has been my review of Homicide by David Simon, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye.